Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jonathan Daube, and testament to the fact that President Wasescha has made very, very, very few mistakes in her distinguished tenure here, but she did ask me to moderate this panel. You'll be punished for that. We're just delighted so many people decided to come on a Friday afternoon, and we're especially delighted that so many people came, including several from out of state. I won't do any introductions because you have a program in front of you. The gang met at 3:30, and we decided that yes, we would talk a little bit about what's going on in Connecticut right now. But the main purpose of this gathering is to celebrate 50 years of a wonderful institution, and that's what we plan to do. I have no idea whether there will be time for questions and comments. If there is, there's a mic there. I just have no idea how gabby my colleagues here are going to be. So let's get straight to some questions for them. And the first question is, in what way did your time at Middlesex Community College shape you and influence the rest of your life? And Anna, you have another minute of your life, but in what way did your time at Middlesex shape you and influence the rest of your life? Who'd like to talk to that?
I'm supposed to start this?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Leila Sullivan, go for it.
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming. It's really incredible to see so many of you that I worked with and enjoyed spending time with. And in its own way, Middletown is my other home. So it's great to be here. How did Middlesex shape me for the rest of my life? Is it finished? This was my first presidency. When I came here, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I had absolutely no idea how to be a president. Thank you to Bob Chapman and to John Coggins for kind of mentoring me through those months at the beginning. And I have to say that in terms of how I've been shaped, I am always a community college person. It comes out of my mouth in every context. I'm very proud to be in our field, and Middlesex is how I define that. I was at other community colleges, but this was the one that really caught my heart, and that will always be the case. In terms of shaping the rest of my life, I did continue in the field for quite a while, and then had the opportunity to teach at a university, North Carolina State University in Raleigh. And interestingly enough, they don't seem to think that community college people know how to do things like research and help with dissertations and so on. I hope I proved them wrong. But my teaching area, even there, was the community colleges. I worked on programs to develop leaders in the department chair level and did everything else that I could think of to help the North Carolina community colleges grow. So that's really, the shape of my life is being part of a community college and of our world.
In professional baseball, when a player spends most of his time in the minors and gets called up to the major league for a month or two, sports writers say he had a cup of coffee in the majors. I had a cup of tea in the president's office. However, I did spend quite a lot of other time there. And how did it influence my life? Well, my entire life has been here. I was a kid when I started, 23 years old, I think. And So I got to see a start in a high school after high school classes were done. Small number of faculty, small number of students. Kind of interesting, though, because since everybody taught at the same time, since classes all started at 3:30, the entire faculty would meet every day before classes. And then we had the transition over to Connecticut Valley Hospital for a while, and then we came here on campus. And it was something to really feel proud about, to see the growth and see the development of the college from those early days to what it has become. And then going through time, moving through the faculty ranks, being a dean for about 15 years, you get to see a lot of changes, and you get to see a lot of student success. And I think that was probably the main thing that sticks with you as you look back. You look at students who had no hope ever of going to college, who went to a community college and maybe got out and got a much better job than they expected, or maybe went on to bachelor's degrees and in some cases PhDs. So it changed people's lives, and seeing people's lives change, I think that changed my life.
I'm Bob Miller, and I was here, I think it was 1993. I had retired from Quinebaug Valley Community College, where I was the founding president, had spent 21 years, was retired, and got a call one day asking if I would take an interim presidency here at Middlesex Community College. And I thought that would be a great way to perhaps end another retirement. And one of the things I learned during the year was not to accept another assignment that was 55 miles or so from home. But in all seriousness, what I found here was a wonderful faculty and staff, people who were very willing to help me and to assist in seeing where Middlesex was at that point. I first knew Middlesex, or came to know part of it, way back when I first joined the system in 1969. I was in the central office, and Phil Wheaton was the first president here, as you know. And I was recalling earlier this afternoon, I came down here with Dr. Barney Shea, who was the acting head of the system at that point. And Phil Wheaton was in his office, which had bars on the windows. And he was facing away from us as we came into the office in his swivel chair. And he turned around with this frightening mask on his face. Barney Shea was not amused. But it is a wonderful institution. I have great memories of being here, even though it was that long ago. And I'm delighted to be back today to celebrate 50 years. Just think of it, half of a century this institution has been in existence. And we need to work as hard as we can to be sure that it's here for another 50 years.
So Wilfredo, how's this place shaped you?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. You know, it's interesting. I think about when the job was offered to me, and I was living in Maryland, and I get a phone call from a member of the community, and I'm wondering, how did this person get my phone number? He indicated to me that he wanted to help me do a good job because the college had to be responsive to the community. He wanted to be sure that I knew that. And in that first conversation, and then the following time coming to the college, the thing that I found so valuable was the relationship that the college has with the community, how it sees itself, the faculty and staff and students, as such an integral part of the Middlesex County area. And I learned the value of that as I look out in the audience, and I think all the individuals who I work with, I know that everybody gave me something here. I think that the value, the engagement, the love that people have for learning. I recall when I had my inauguration and I talked about my 4 pillars, and I talked about students, learning, community, and diversity. It was very easy to talk about that because even during my early tenure, the faculty and staff and students, how they reached out to me to welcome me, to want me to be part of this institution, to be part of this community. Interestingly enough, after I got reassigned, I didn't move. I love the community here just as much. And I'm still engaged, even though I have to be engaged in the Hartford and Capital Community College region, and I like that as well. But my heart is here. And I work and I play here, and I have my little boy being raised here. So I have the best of both worlds, being still at Middlesex in some way. And interestingly, what I always tell myself, Wilfredo, stay out of Anna's hair and stuff like that, because you want to be fair. And I always say, I'm here for you, but I would not impose. And I think that's one of the things that I also valued from my engagement with faculty and staff. You told me that you would be here for me. Not for me, Wilfredo, but for me, what I believe in: students, learning, community, and diversity. And that I will always carry with me, and I will always work towards because of that.
Anyone else want to respond to that? Dianne.
As far as how it shaped me, I learned 2 valuable things when I came here. It was the 3rd community college that I had been at as president, coming from Quinnebog, but having been at 3 Rivers before. And it just solidified the idea for me that every single one is different, as it should be, because it reflects that community. And that gives me a perspective, and Bob Miller a perspective, in conversations we have with people like President Ojakian, that this is not a one-size-fits-all state, and it's not a one-size-fits-all system, and we experienced that firsthand. The other thing that I learned, and it took me a while to learn it, is the difference between being a permanent president and an interim president. When you come as an interim president, it's sort of keep the trains running, don't make any big changes because somebody will be coming after you, and it's too difficult for staff and community to change and then change again. And that was my theory for the first semester. And some of you who were here that full year know that I snapped, and in the second semester decided that we still needed to move briskly forward regardless of who was coming after me. And I just have to tell a quick story. Bob says he got the call, would you like to come and drive to Middlesex every day? I got the call, would I come? And I said yes. And then I started getting other people saying things to me like, gee, you're going to be a good sport when you go in the trailers? What trailers? Gee, have you done a 5-year NEASC before? Why are you asking? Well, we're going to do it this year. And there was a problem in the financial aid office. So I talked to the chancellor at the time, Mark Herzog, and I said, you didn't, and the executive assistant was on leave, so there was nobody in the office with me. So I talked to Mark Herzog, and I said, you didn't tell me these things, and he got this incredible grin and says, a good negotiator never tells all, Dianne. So from that I learned when someone offers you something, ask some questions. But I enjoyed my year here. I made friends that I continue to have, so it shaped me in a variety of ways.
Let me jump in because I'm not going to be asked by this guy. I was all 38 when I came in with my little Triumph Spitfire, barreling down the parking lot, and some of you were looking and saying, who the heck is going to be this new dean? And I really want to talk more like John, because what you did for me was you shaped my administrative career by my contact with this fantastic faculty. And the thing that I remember the most was when we had the vote on remediation, and maybe some of you remember that. We were having a faculty meeting, you remember, I see you, and it was like, I don't know if it was 38 to 39 or 48 to 49, but it was that close. It was one vote that this faculty voted to have remedial courses. There was a big fight on campus about that. And to me, that was a turning point in my career, because I really, I came from Borough of Manhattan Community College. I was a lowly associate dean. I became a dean of faculty here, and suddenly I had that awesome responsibility. It was the work that I did in conjunction with all of you that convinced me that I could go on. I also must say that when Bob Chapman knocked on my door at Century Hills, I was renting an apartment in Century Hills at 10 o'clock one night and said, "How would you like to be the acting president of Middlesex, because I'm going to be at Tunx's for a little while?" I gulped and I said, "What do you mean? I can't do that." But then I also said, anybody can be a president. All you do is you tell people what to do. So I did it. And Lorraine Fazzino was my secretary the first day that I was here. She said, how are you going to be able to do all of this? Remember, I'm now maybe 40 at the most. Lorraine is saying to me, "How are you going to do this?" And I said, "Oh, it's a piece of cake. Anybody can just be president. Anybody tells everybody what to do." And about 2 weeks later, I realized that I had to raise money for the New Haven Symphony that we had contracted to have the first concert here. And I said to myself, "Oh, blank, how am I going to do this?" And we had a cocktail party, and it was my first foray in fundraising. We had a cocktail party, and we invited like 25 people to the library for a wine and cheese. And we were in the Rotary Club at the time, and people in the Rotary Club become interested. So the 25 invitations became precious. Everybody wanted to come here. And we ended up with like 250 people in the library, and they were all donating money, and we were able to get this New Haven Symphony here. So that taught me that fundraising is important in a public institution. And, when I sat on the chair for the first time, I was never intending to stay as a president. I always wanted to go back to the dean of faculty. And Pat, my wife, who's sitting here, can testify we've had many a fight saying, I'm a faculty member first and a president second. And she said, she's always telling me, no, you have to be a president first and faculty member second. No, I am a faculty member first and a president second. And I learned that from you guys, from the faculty of this institution. And I have carried that throughout. When Chapman said, once you sit in the chair, you can't get out of that chair, I said, sure enough, I want to go back to the faculty, don't worry about it. Somehow, I don't know if it was Bob, but somebody encouraged me to apply for the executive deanship at Tunx's. And I applied half-heartedly, honestly. And I got the position, and Bob and I exchanged keys in Cromwell. In the Cromwell Inn, we parked the cars, we exchanged keys to the car, exchanged keys to the college, and he came back, and I went to Tunx's, and the rest is history. So I owe you, the members of the faculty of this college, my understanding that as an administrator, I could work with faculty and I could make things happen in a very positive way. So thank you.
So the rest of my life hasn't happened yet. So So I was thinking, I don't know how this experience will shape me, but in fact, I think I do, and I would use the model of the liberal arts, which is for the rest of my life, I'm learning things in a bigger, richer way that I once was introduced to a long time ago in the liberal arts college. And so I know that I will, I will have this experience of life. I think you all know I'm going back to Minnesota. And as things occur and as I solve problems and as I worry about things, I'll remember and understand more fully what I learned here. But I do want to just say a couple of things now that I have the mic in my hand. One is when I was inaugurated here at the college 6 years ago, I was the 6th president of Middlesex Community College, and there are only 5 other photographs in the hall, so I know that to be true. But the fact was that I was the 11th president because there were so many interims here at the college. And I think that's a piece of the history of the college, that there have been a lot of leaders here. And I don't necessarily think that that's a problem. I mean, every person brings their own charm. I always look at Bob because he's a comedian. You all have heard John Coggins be tremendous comedians at retirement parties here. I mean, everybody brings their own gifts and talents. And I was at the Paul Wellstone Memorial Service in Minnesota a long time ago, and he died just 11 days before the Senate election. And the mayor of St. Paul, the former mayor, stood up and said, he was introducing the interim president of the University of Minnesota, and he said, I don't know why we use the term interim, because if you think about it, we're all interim, right? And we are, right? So, Dianne, it's good to just get down to business at some point, because we're all interim, right? And I've had a great time getting down to business. So now it's Cathryn's turn.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything on this answer, but I had the privilege of coming to Middlesex while I was also president of Tunxus in 2000, I guess. So as we look forward to the model that's now being created, I find it very ironic that I'm being replaced by, as I retire next month, I am being replaced by the president of another college in our system who will then be assigned 2 campuses. Nobody asked me if it was a good idea, but we'll see what happens. And I can tell you that I personally did survive the experience. I loved being at Middlesex. I learned a great deal about the interconnectedness of our campuses and our students and everybody we deal with. Not that we're cookie cutter, we are so different, but we are all interconnected. And I look at this panel of people right here, and you think about the 6 degrees of separation cliche. I'm connected to every single person on this panel in one way or another, either having served with them as a president or Eduardo having the Tunxus history, and I find things in the files that have his name on them, and knowing him from a previous life. And of course, Jonathan, I've known probably the longest, because I became president of Berkshire Community College in Massachusetts after he left to come to Connecticut, and he's
then
the one.
she cleaned things up.
I did, and he's the one who helped me come here. So it's a very, very small world that we live in, but a very, very important one. Those connections, to me, are what help us help our students be successful. The other thing I've often said about community college education is that it's like camping. You never have every resource that you need at the time that you need it, so you make do with what you have, and you make it up and make it work. And that's exactly what we do. That's what we've done at Tunxus all these years that I've been there. That's what we did at Middlesex, and Middlesex has been doing. And it makes us all stronger, and this is a fantastic college. There are 2 other things I would say about Middlesex. Number one, when I came down here, I got very, very jealous of the physical plant, because up in Farmington, in our little failed shopping center, we didn't have room to turn around. I would have given anything, I would still give anything for a room like this on that other campus there. So I did get a little jealous. I confess now, I was jealous. But academically, another thing that happened here was my true introduction to service learning and community engagement. And that happened because of the faculty here that I met who were doing this work, and some of you are sitting out there, I see you. And I tried to take that back to Tunxus. In fact, that has been one of our hallmarks of late, has been in getting students connected to the community and making the lives that they lead on campus and off campus equally meaningful. So thank you for that. I really appreciate having had that experience here. This is a great place. Another 50 years is not out of the realm of possibility.
I think that allows us to segue into the second question. What's distinguished Middlesex Community College from other colleges that you have known? In what way is this place different?
The view is nice.
It really is.
Well, so I'll jump into this. So the view is spectacular, particularly out of the president's office window. So I'd recommend everybody go take a look in my office and then look out at the Aragoni Bridge. It's fantastic. one of the things that distinguishes this college to me is that there are roughly 3,000 people, give or take, and on certain days of the week more and certain days of the week less. The little community that I'm moving back into in Minnesota is a little bit, it's like 2,500 people. I always think of this as like a small town. And there are people who are on the faculty who are like the elders in a community who have formed it, made decisions, and there are just so many people you see all the time. You do honestly get to know their names, and students who stand out and who are not only the leaders, but the ones who are in the reception area and founders and who are chipper and happy to see people and direct them to wherever they want to go. So there is something wonderful about small towns. I'm not a big metropolitan person, and so for me, this was exactly the right size college, and I loved it, and I do love it.
I think one of the things that makes Middlesex unique is the fact that you have always had an approach to the curriculum that is, partly vocational, but you always had the liberal arts in it. So you really truly train and educate people. And again, there are some colleges that lean more towards the training side and more to vocational is a bad term, but really more to the training side. And other colleges lean more towards the liberal arts side. And it is hard to find a place that really has the combination like you have here. And I really think this is a unique college that way. And the population that you serve here is not different than other colleges, but each population has its own soul, so its own raison d'etre. And I think that here, the importance of being able to get a job when you finish is there. But also because of the proximity, the smallness of the state, students not only can finish here and then go to the baccalaureate relatively easily. Like, for example, when I was president of Corning Community College, the closest college was Binghamton, and that was 74 miles each way away. Or Ithaca, 50 miles each way away. So for somebody who has 2 jobs and a kid at home, trying to be able to go and get the baccalaureate is very difficult in that setting. But here I think you have the benefit of having a relatively small state, and you have the combination both of the occupational and the liberal arts components.
I find it intriguing that of the campuses, and I've worked at 3 of the colleges in our system now, I think about having offered classes down in the shoreline, having offered classes here in Middletown, having offered classes in Meriden. The uniqueness of those different communities and the college coming together to want to reach out and offer education to others no matter where they're at. I think also when I was here, the work that was being done to use distance learning and technology, I really felt that Middlesex was really a leader in our system in doing that. And I think also because of having, even now, I guess you're recognized for the media program, the Center for New Media, so much so that my son, Adrian, and many of you know Adrian, he's a graduate at University of Richmond, and he came to Middlesex to learn how to work. And his career has been shaped by his experience at Middlesex, because you think about what you, the faculty and the staff, offer to hold up people, even people who have the skills and the supports, but also the individuals who don't have the skills and the support. I think about working with, when we were looking at developmental education, I wasn't familiar with the history about the vote, but I've always felt that whatever needed to be done, the people here, and this also is at the other colleges, but the way you have come together to address concerns of students and finding the way to make things happen, having a can-do, an innovative and creative posture and way of approaching things. I think that when, I have to say, I never not experienced not having financial difficulties in my 17 years at any of the campuses, because we've always had financial problems. But we've come together as a community to address them internally here on campus, but also our external. You know, I think about, as I see members who were on the foundation when I was here, who are still on the foundation, and people who said, what can I do to help? And that for me is very special, and that's what the uniqueness about community and community colleges.
Yeah, one of the things that I found different when I came here was the encouragement for students to form study groups. My oldest daughter attended Middlesex, and the only reason she went to any school was to hang out with friends. And it really, for her, was a turning point when she found that she could form friendships with other people that were studying the same subject and so on. It was a little difficult for me because I would sometimes be in my pajamas and I'd go downstairs and there would be a group of Middlesex students sitting in our basement, and there I am with the jammies and the curlers. But I really thought that that emphasis on engaging students to work with each other, not only with the faculty member, but working with each other, so that learning really became I'll use your word again, a connected thing. And it took away that individual competitiveness that I think many people think American education is about. So for me, that ability or that encouragement by many of you on the faculty to have students form groups, work together, and learn together was one of the most important things that I took away from my time here at Middlesex, and I honestly hope that that's still happening as much as it was then.
There was mention of the fact that you've had 11 presidents, and you can look at that as a negative. You've had to adjust, those of you who have been here from the beginning, like John, to 11 different people. But I see that the other way. I think in a way it's a bit of a strength for you because there's been a lot of, quote, cross-pollination, that people come in, bring some of their ideas, and those people leave with ideas they get from you. I said after I was here that I thought there should be a program in the system for administrators where they could move for a year. There'd be no threat. They weren't giving up a job, but they would go to another college to have that experience, to learn the difference in the colleges, but also to practice their craft, if you will, in a different environment and learn from that. So you all had to adjust to 11 of us, those of you who have been here, but I think in a way it was a benefit to the institution because you had so many different styles of leadership. Each of us maybe have a different priority about community college. So I would turn that around and say I think it's a strength that you win the prize in the system for the most presidents.
And
it's 12, not 11.
is
Oh,
it
it's
12? Oh, well, John Coggins, it would be added, right, exactly.
At 9.
You should explain how you ended up being the president.
Okay, while we discuss numbers,
I was just going to comment on what makes this college different from other colleges, which it might seem strange me answering that since I've never been at another college as a worker, but my background, I came from 2 private selective liberal arts colleges and then came to a community college, which was in its 2nd year of operation, and it was kind of a new concept. But in my time here, I obviously traveled to other colleges and met with other deans, and my impression is that the people at Middlesex were always willing to chip in and help out when it was needed. It seemed to me that that was different from a lot of the other places. For example, when I would meet with the division chairs and I'd say to them, can you get me 6 faculty to work summer registrations when they're not on contract? And they always came through. And at the risk of singling people out and thereby appearing to miss others. But I've got two people sitting right here in front of me that reminded me. There was a time when there was some federal grant that was available to the system. It was, the amount of money was about $250,000. It was going to be spread out among the colleges, but the application form was ridiculous. It was virtually difficult, impossible to read and hard to figure out how to fill out. Well, the Academic Dean's Council had a meeting with the people from the federal department that was administering it. We asked for an extension from, I think it was May till September to give us time to work on it. The Fed said no, either get it in by Friday or the money goes back. So I think, I know all the deans at the other colleges threw up their hands and said, possible, we can't do it. I came back and I met with Donna Yanowich and Rich Lenosi. They stayed up all night putting together the list that we need. What was that? Separate, yes. Brought the information we needed in to my office Friday morning. I slapped it together in an application. Marie, who's here tonight too, or this afternoon, personally drove it over to the appropriate department and handed it in. And as a result, the entire $250,000 went to Middlesex. You probably remember that. But that, I mean, people were willing to do that. And there, I mean, if we think back on it, there are countless examples of where the college had a need of some sort, and the people here, maybe because we grew out of a little tiny after-school, high school, to a medium-sized place. They remembered the pulling together, the family atmosphere, and I've always found that. I think that's a very distinct characteristic of Middlesex. People were willing to pitch in and help out when it was needed.
I have a question here, moving along. I have a question here, I guess, for the real presidents, not the interims so much. Chopped liver and all that. Yes, I know, Dianne. We put Dianne right here so that she could control me, not so that I could control her. Describe something from your time at the college that you might have done differently. Describe something that you might have done differently.
Okay.
And we've just raised the expectations a little bit.
I think one of the things that I was most disappointed with myself while here was that the Middlesex Hospital had a nursing school. You all remember that? And they were going to have to close the school for whatever reasons that had to do with the federal funding. And I really thought that we could use a nursing school here, and that school, you know, they were willing to give us the building and support us in a lot of ways. And I just didn't know how to play that correctly in the politics. So we ended up not having the nursing school, and I've always regretted that, because I think it would have been a fantastic addition to the curriculums here. But more so, it was a learning experience for me on, you know, what you really need to do when you're trying to work with various people, different points of view in the community, and also with some people who were more politically powerful or whatever. So that was one that I really wish I had known how to do better, and then you'd have a nursing school here.
Are you and I the other two ones? The two real? Yeah.
One of the things that I wish I had done differently was when the college had a sister college in China, and I had the opportunity to go to China. I don't believe I pushed the system office hard enough to get all of us involved in better relationships with other countries and doing that. I have to say that one of the things that came in, one of the other questions that Jonathan had asked us to think about was something that made us very proud. And I have to say, related to that relationship with China, was when our students in their English classes wrote essays about what it was to be a student in America. And they were published in Chinese. And the document was a book that was made in China. And we didn't follow up. I didn't follow up in a way that I think would have opened the doors for some of our students, faculty, and staff to have the opportunity that I had when I went to China.
Whatever you regret, you've still got a few hours to fix it.
I regret being on such a short leash with this thing. So I think both Leila and Wilfredo were talking about, how complex things are when you try to make changes. And I wish that the decision to close the West Main Meriden Center had gone better for everybody. And I certainly, could have understood more clearly how incredibly strong the political side of it was. I was, maybe a little too content with how it was such a rational decision, and I lost control of it. I mean, I think everybody here knows that, and so. What I regret in part is that the college received a lot of bad press, and that didn't help us in any way, shape, or form. We had been growing enrollment. We were winning against the tide of declining numbers of high school graduates. We had the largest class ever, and then that following fall, our enrollment started to decline, and it hasn't gone off a steep cliff, but it certainly isn't as strong as it was before. I think it just is the reality of being a president anymore, especially in the public sector, is that everything you do is going to be seen through the prism of 1,000 other perspectives. And for example, with Wilfredo's hope and desire to build a connection with the Chinese around community college education, we're normed to want to build things and to make things stronger and better, but sometimes we can't. And the circumstance with Meriden was that we really needed to reduce and constrict what we were doing, and that was just much more complicated. So, another thing about it is if you live long enough, sometimes things do get better, and thank heavens. And this fall, we'll be opening what we're calling MXCC at Platt, which is the Platt High School in Meriden, and that's an elegant solution. So, the patience is its own reward, and I think that worked out well. But I do regret that. I regret especially the bad press and the. It's so important to bring the college along with those kinds of dramatic decisions, and we brought everybody along, and then we weren't able to execute the decision, so then that was even more complicated. So that was a dark moment.
Okay, we can't avoid it much longer. Can we talk just a little bit about what's going on right now in the state of Connecticut? Does anyone have any wisdom? I might say, to start this off, that, as you know, Mr. Ojekian is going around and visiting all the campuses, and they're all available on YouTube. If you're going to watch one, I'm going to make an editorial comment simply for myself. I would watch Quinebaug Valley Community College. 2 hours and 5 minutes, plus 10 or 15 minutes of interviews. The strength of it, at least to this listener, was, and no other college can match this, of course, they began with President Emeritus Williams, and it ended with President Emeritus Miller. And in between, the community was there. It was streamed on radio at the time. And nobody that I could hear, nobody was advocating for their own program. They were all advocating for some other program. It was extremely powerful. I have no idea the extent to which it was heard. But the, the community really did come together, both the college community and the larger community, around that institution. And even if you had never been to Quinebaug Valley Community College and couldn't even spell Quinebaug, it was very powerful. It was very powerful. So anyway, that's given you time to think. Any words of wisdom or expletives that we need to delete or...
You know, I'm an outsider, so I can probably say something without any consequence. But I think this is true. I mean, not that anything I say is always without consequence. That's a given. But the point, the fact of the matter is that when I was at Tunxus, my title was executive dean, and they were trying to consolidate what was Greater Hartford at that time as Nantucket and Tunxus, and it didn't work. That's why, Cathryn, when you came in, you were president. I have worked in a system most of my life, City University of New York, and I can tell you for a fact that if this is being done to save money, it's not going to do it. It's not going to save money. Maybe at the very beginning, when you make certain that there are some vacancies that are not filled, or you create some vacancies in the higher administrative ranks, you might save some money at the beginning. But eventually you will end up with an administrator on campus. And just to give you an example, at the City University of New York, we were highly centralized. My very good friend, Tony Perez, who is president of Board of Manhattan Community College, used to be president of South Central. I get his goat all the time when I say, Tony, you're not a president, you're a dean. You're a dean of a campus. Oh, what do you mean? If you want to think of yourself, I say, deans, think of yourself as dean. I'm a president, says he. But the fact of the matter is that the budget is centralized, so he gets the budget from the central office. Every personnel decision really comes through to the Board of Trustees in the central office. Every grievance that takes place in every campus is handled through the central office. But that doesn't mean that each campus doesn't have a fiscal officer. It doesn't mean that each campus doesn't have an HR office. So at the very beginning, things appear as if they're a good administrative decision by reducing the administrative staff in each one of the campuses. But eventually, there will be a creep. And eventually, one campus will get an HR person, another campus will now want to have an HR person, one campus will get a fiscal person, another campus will want to get a fiscal person. And you will end up with not only the same administration that you have in each one of the campuses, but you'll have another layer of administration in the central office. So I think that doesn't work fiscally. There are some benefits of having a system office, though. And the benefits are that if you get into trouble financially, the university bails you out. There's no question about it. If you have a union problem that you need representation, and it's a difficult one, the central office at the City University, we had 16 lawyers at our disposal. So all you had to do was call central office, and you would have those people representing you. So there are some benefits, but in terms of fiscal exigency or fiscal conservatism, it really just doesn't work.
People who aren't employed by the regents are freer to speak, I think, like Eduardo or Bob or I, which is our point at Quinebaug. The state is in a terrible fiscal situation. We know that. And I understand you have your session coming up later. So I think you could make it clear that President Ojekian doesn't need to spend 30 minutes of the 2 hours convincing you there's a fiscal problem. You just simply say, we agree that there's a fiscal problem. Now let's figure what we're going to do for the community colleges about it. And the fiscal problem's worse after he left Quinebaug than it was before because they released the new figures. My tack was it's not just a fairness issue that $28 million has to only come from community colleges. I see that as basically a value judgment about the community colleges, the people who work here, the students who go here. So this would be the fourth reorganization or consolidation the system's undergone. The answer to that was that even though we have one Board of Regents and one system office, that somehow he gets his money in two block grants, one for the universities and the other for the community colleges. So our answer back was, well, perhaps the legislature could change that. It costs them nothing to do that, so there's some flexibility, because $28 million, he admits, is about 400 positions in the community colleges. That goes very deep into each one of us. So for the system that has the most minorities, the most Pell Grant awardees, the most cost-effective way to get a bachelor's degree, that's undergone 4 consolidations, when you come after us, that's a value judgment. He also will tell you there's legislators that are quite willing to close a college. And he says, some of them even say, close it in my district. And my answer to that is, as long as they'll run for re-election on the platform, vote for me, I close the local community college, I'll believe that. Thank you.
I think what is so disheartening is the lack of understanding of the community college mission by those who are making policy. We had a board of trustees and a central office, and I see Andy McCurdy out here, and delighted to see him here, because those were better days. We had a board of trustees and a central office that knew what the mission of community colleges is. We have a board of regents now that I don't think most of them have the foggiest notion of what a community college is or how important it is to serve the people we serve. And I think what distresses me is that this plan is being billed as students first. And as I said the other day, we've been doing students first ever since the community college started.
I spoke with somebody recently about this, and of course expressed my distress for many of the same reasons we've talked about. And the person said to me, well, nobody came up with a better plan. And so my question to all of us is there still time for us to craft a better plan or to work with others on a plan that will deal with the fiscal problem? I'm certainly agreeing that that exists, but I didn't get the sense that all of us were included in the discussion about making this plan. So if there's any wiggle room, then can we still suggest other ways of dealing with this?
The plan was unveiled, or strategy as they're now calling it. I don't care what they call it. The plan was unveiled on a Monday or Tuesday and voted on a Thursday. No, nobody was involved. And even many people in the central office had no idea what was coming. It was very tightly held. If I may just say a point about the old board's commitment and its staff's commitment to the mission. Somebody said to me the other day, most of the regents wouldn't be able to find a community college campus even if they had GPS. It was kind of a nice saying. Anyone have something more creative than that to say?
This isn't creative, but I think, and I'm not really going to reflect much on what's going on right now, but here's something that really disturbs me related to this, which is understanding the mission of a community college. So when you open any newspaper anymore, what you see are that the graduation rates from community colleges are abysmal in 150% of time. So in 3 years, 14, 15, 16% of the students graduate. And I feel like I'd kind of like to hear about this from the perspective of when the earlier years in the community colleges here in Connecticut. When you design a system which is not like a 4-year residential college, where 18 to 22-year-olds leave their homes and focus 100% of their energy on being in undergraduate school, and you say, well, that's great. You know, we got a wonderful system of higher ed in the United States, but we're leaving out, you know, the veterans, the adult learners, the people who had to go to work for whatever reason, and that group for whom we really do need to lift them up into our society and our economy and our communities, our neighborhoods. We're going to create these community colleges where, guess what, you can go to school part-time, or you can show up at a high school at 3:30 and take 2 or 3 classes and get out at 9:30 and still go back and go to work the next day. When you do that, you 100% automatically slow down progress toward a degree. So you know, you can't have it both ways, and I feel like we need to get that message out there a lot more. Everybody can't go to school full-time. They can't leave high school and go directly into college. They can't all live in dormitories. They can't all move away from home, you know, hundreds of miles, different states. Many people need to stay in their communities, and we want them to stay in our communities, but we also want them to have a college education because they'll be more productive citizens. So how did we lose that basic understanding of a community college mission? And so.
You heard me not too long ago.
The mic in front of you.
Yeah, you did it. So I'll give me the chance, I'll grab it. But you know, after almost 28 years of presidencies, I have learned something very, very important, and that is that community colleges are not just places of opportunity, but community colleges are places where we have to take the responsibility for the success of the student. And it's not just the faculty, it's the institution. So the only way that I think you can increase the graduation rate and the retention rate, and therefore the tax base in the community, and therefore the coffers of the state, is by increasing your retention rate. And the only way that I believe you can do that is by paying close attention to the academic and student support services that are needed to make certain the student can graduate. We have plenty of examples of people who come to you, whether it be on a part-time basis or on a full-time basis, who have horrendous problems at home. They don't even know how they're going to pay the rent maybe for the next month. They have kids that are sick. They may have a boyfriend that thinks that you're being too uppity by trying to go to school and beat you up every Saturday afternoon when he comes home drunk. I mean, there are countless of problems the students have, you know, social, emotional, financial problems. And we have to take the responsibility as an institution to ensure that every student that we accept, every student that comes through our door, if that student fails, the institution has failed. Now, that is not the cookie cutter of a junior college. We're not just imitating the 4-year colleges, and we never will be senior colleges if we continue to just try to do the same thing that they do. The counselor sitting in their office waiting for the students to come to them. The financial aid office, you know, waiting for the students to come in, fill out the FAFSA. If we don't go to the student, if we don't create a team approach to ensure that each student is able to succeed, we're always going to be sitting in panels like this saying, oh, well, you know, we don't have enough money in order to make certain that the students can do better, or, you know, the high schools should do a better job because they're not preparing the students for the rigor of our curriculum, and so on and so forth. So I think, going back to what you were saying, Leila, I think the legislators, the leaders of the state, need to understand that community colleges have a totally different mission than the 4-year colleges, a totally different mission. We save people's lives by not just being academic pathways to the baccalaureate, but we save people's lives by being somewhat of a social agency that takes the person and provides the support that is necessary for them to be able to launch their careers into a baccalaureate setting. So I think there's a lot of work to be done.
Does our favorite piano tuner have anything?
I would like to ask.
Wilfredo.
No, I've now been in Connecticut 17 years, but I would like to hear from my colleague presidents, because clearly we are where we are because some of our legislators have not, I believe, taken certain actions or supported certain kinds of things. I'd like to know, you reflecting back and seeing how things have changed and what we can do to reach them, because I think that's where the question was, where can we make an impact? It has to be at that level, because the system office doesn't report to us. It reports to the legislature and the governor. And so until we can get them to understand, there's a tremendous amount of years of experience here. And I know that we were doing well, but what happened?
I do have a few thoughts. I don't know that I can answer that question, Wilfredo, but first of all, the first thing that we can do is move out of New England. And by that, I mean, I have worked in 7 or 8 or 9 different states, and by far the most challenging has been in the Northeast. When you have a private college on every corner, there is a Puritan mentality residual that we are responsible for pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps. There is little reason for the state to see public higher education as anything but an option and a luxury, not a necessity. That same attitude is not true in other parts of the country where there are not private institutions. And I will say, even when I spent some time here at Middlesex, I heard that there was a feeling that Middlesex had to compete with Wesleyan, or wanted to be Little Wesleyan or Wesleyan on the Hill or something. I don't know how widespread that was, but I did hear it. We're almost, as community colleges, since we are a uniquely American invention, we have tried over the years very, very hard to break away from the K-12 system from whence many colleges started and attach ourselves to the higher ed system, which meant we ended up imitating many things that the baccalaureate institutions do, at the same time that we were trying to embrace the entire universe of people who couldn't get into a baccalaureate institution like Wesleyan or Central or Albertus Magnus or wherever. So our own schizophrenia, in a way, our own split personality has been a defining characteristic of the entire community college movement. And I'm not saying that's bad, I just think we need to recognize that we have done remarkable work for who we are and what we have tried to be. The fact that it's not understood by others doesn't surprise me too much, because sometimes we don't understand who we are or what we do very well. But when we have a legislature full of people who are either graduates of UConn, the flagship, or one of those private schools, relatively few community college graduates, and those who sometimes are reluctant to admit that they are our alumni. It is a very difficult sell, and as Dianne said earlier, it's a value judgment to look at how we have been funded over the years. And it's not that we haven't tried, and we have a whole lot of moral support. People think we're wonderful, but won't sign the check. And that's very, very frustrating, and it is even more critical right now given the predicament the entire state is in. But on some days I'm very hopeful because of that camping mentality and that make-do mentality that I think we have in our experience and our devotion. We are all missionaries in one way or another. And I'm very hopeful when I think about the individual energy that goes into this enterprise And then there are other days when I think about where we fit in the firmament of requirements of state government to fund. We do not measure up to roads and bridges and Medicare and social services. And that makes me very sad.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one? Okay, I think we have some time for questions, comments. Please keep them brief. Anyone with not a speech, please, please, please. As a comment, okay. Please use the mic because this is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. Although the last 15 minutes or so we've been thinking about the serious challenges of our fine institution, what we need to keep in mind, because and it's you folks, and what the presidents of the 11 or 12 or whomever there are have been part of this institution, what you've instilled in the college that has made it a fine institution with its staff and students and faculty. I have the vantage point, like John, of being in the first 2 years of the college when there was a dean, Phil Wigton, before he became president. And with each of you, I have the vantage point, like John, of having very positive feelings and hopefulness about how you folks shape the college. And that needs to be recognized in our reflections, putting aside for 15 minutes the grim challenges ahead. All of you have kept the college together in your own different kinds of ways. And you've kept it going forward, as Dianne has said, or as Anna likes the image of sustainability from the founders to its ongoing future. There's a great deal of vitality inherent in the college. Just a couple of ways. I can say, even though faculty can be crabby at times, that I have very, in case you hadn't picked up on that in the
Presidents
past.
are never crabby,
Yeah,
right?
I have very positive memories about each of you. Your friendliness, your supportiveness, your expectations to instill in the faculty and the staff what we're all about has brought the college forward.
Is there a question there somewhere?
No.
Or-
No.
Okay.
It's a comment. I think it's a rhetorical question. I think we could reflect on the fact that we can't beat ourselves too much in this period of reflection.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Kevin. Chair of the Regional Advisory Council.
Hello. Obviously, we've been talking about some challenging times, but let's lighten it up. What are some funny anecdotes that have happened here that bring smiles to your faces?
That was my last question. That's great.
Sorry. Steal your thunder, Jonathan.
Say something funny, either about yourself or the college.
I have one. Just close your eyes and think about this. 38 years old, actually 40 years old, sitting in the president's office, looking at that beautiful view that you talked about, and actually maybe 7 o'clock at night, and it was in winter, so it was dark, so I wasn't watching the view. And I see a car barreling down the fire lane. And I said, what is this? So I go out, and there's this very well-dressed woman, was obviously not a starving student. And the car was a Mercedes, a silver Mercedes, I remember it. And I said, what's the matter? What's the problem? And she said, I pay my taxes here, and I parked there in the faculty parking lot, and somebody was telling me that I couldn't park there. At that time, the faculty parking lot was next to the C building, we used to call this a building. And I couldn't believe my ears. I mean, she thought that because she was obviously a well-to-do person, or she was an entitled person, and somebody told her that she couldn't park in the faculty parking lot, she could come down, barreling down. I'm talking barreling down that fire lane. She could have killed somebody. And I'm saying there as a president, what do I say? What do I do? That was that was one of many, but that was one that I remember well.
What did you say?
I said, you really want me to tell you what I said? I said, you can park down here, all right? You're not going to park up there. And she said, I want to talk to my councilman or whatever. You know, she was really upset. But I couldn't believe it.
Okay.
Taking the car.
Should have taken the car.
Let's get a response from everybody on that one. Something funny about you or about the college?
Rich Nosi, you might enjoy this. My son was in the program, and I come home one day, and he had made a video of something. And I'm looking at the video, and then I see a bunch of students in my bedroom. And I said, I had to say, Adrian, don't we get any space, any personal space?
When I came here, I came on July 1, and a lot of people were gone. So I made a concerted effort that every time I met somebody, I would then send a follow-up email. So I did this for the month of July and part of August, and I get nothing back. So I think these are very unfriendly people that Mark sent me to. So we go to the first staff meeting, and I'm meeting people, and they seemed very gracious and welcoming. So I said, well, I'm just surprised I didn't get response to my email. And I'm telling you the answer was, what emails? People weren't using email. So I suggested they might go back. I think they were sharing a computer in division offices or something, but it was just obvious to me. I'd say, so glad to meet you today, looking forward, but silence from them. So one person who I'm sure is retired as I tell this story, I'm looking around, came back and said, you're right, I just looked. I have stuff going back 2 years on that computer. So that's my funny story.
So I have to give you my funny story, and it's from Manchester days. I thought that somehow I could retire without ever using a computer. And my assistant would print stuff out and so on. I mean, obviously ridiculous. Carol Eaton, who was then the academic dean, went off to be a president, and a wonderful one, came into my office one day, shut the door, and said, Jonathan, this is embarrassing. You got to, you can imagine what else she said. Very nicely, but that's what she said. Off she went. 10 minutes later, this one calls from Quinnebog and says the same thing, though even more strongly, because after all, she didn't report to me. Clearly, those two had plotted, and they've never denied it. They had talked to each other. Carol obviously went back to her office, told her, yeah, I've done my bit, and she did hers. Just advice to everybody, whatever happens, if Dianne Williams sends you an email, respond to it, please. Okay, what else?
Well, I want to add, this is not about Middlesex, but it's on my mind because in looking, always I find things that I'm not looking for, but never the things I am looking for on my desk. Anyway, I came across a memo that I received in 2001, and it was from Bill Schwab. And we had, at that point, a resource management committee.
He was the president of Norwalk.
He was the president of Norwalk, and the founder of, the Center for Teaching Schwab Institute is named after, Schwab Leadership Institute is named after him. He had written some corrections on the minutes that I had sent out to all the presidents by email. And down at the bottom was a note that said, Kathy, because he's known me for years, and that used to be my name. He said, Kathy, I wanted to send this back to you with these corrections via email, but I just ain't that good yet. In this sign, he said, sorry, Bill. So you weren't the only one who was challenged by technology in those days, Jonathan. Our very good friend Bill Schwab had his issues as well.
And he now has a technology building named for him.
Yes, he does. He would find that very funny.
I do have a technology story as well. when I came and my inauguration, I think, was in 1990. We usually waited a period of time. And so I decided to get very creative about this inauguration, and I went to whoever was running the audiovisual area, and I said, well, you know, to finish up this speech I'm going to make, I want you to make this screen and take the Middlesex logo and make it come up on this screen and then twirl around. And they all looked at me like, what are you talking about? That's insane. You can't do that sort of thing. Well, in fact, they did. And I don't recall which of you may have been involved with that, but after walking through the facility downstairs, I'm thinking that, can you make the Middlesex thing go around? It was one of my more memorable moments, but the reason I wanted to bring it up is that to me, it signifies what has been done in this institution for so many years, and how the creativity, you know, since the time that I was here, how much it has grown, and how well the faculty have been able to incorporate this. Never mind the administrators; they're still not working on the email. But as you go into this period of transition, whatever it may bring, the reason I have real hope and real faith is that institutions go through changes, but the faculty and the students don't have to change. You're always going to be the heart of the operation. You're always going to get in that classroom or out on the lawn or wherever it is you do your teaching these days, and you're going to have people who are eager to learn, and that, as long as that basic function, the teaching and the learning, and it goes in both directions, is here in this college, you will be okay. Whatever happens with the administrations and the finance is going to happen, but the real activity here is going to be what you teach, what you learn, and what your students teach and learn as well. So hang on to that hope. There will be another 50 years of this wonderful institution, and I'm hoping to hear a lot more about it as we go along.
Got to be funny.
Yeah.
Remember the question.
Well, I was thinking about when I left here after a year and the mixed emotions I had, because I had such a good year here at Middlesex with the wonderful people. And it reminded me of the year I spent as an interim at Manchester Community College. I had...
Some of us know what's coming.
It's good.
I'd completed a year there and was feeling a bit of sadness as I left, a lump in my throat. And while I was saying goodbye in the administration building, a couple of the faculty members tied some tin cans to the state car, which was outside. One of the drivers from Quinnebog had brought the state car over to take me back to Quinnebog. And so I finished my goodbyes. I went out and got in the car, and we drove out the long driveway of Manchester with the tin cans bouncing in the background, and an 18-wheeler was coming in as we got to the end of the driveway. And the driver rolled his window down and he said, "I hope you two guys will be very happy together."
After I retired, I taught for about 10 years and enjoyed it tremendously. And I happened to be in the records office one day and was introduced to a new person who had just come in to work there. Susan introduced me. And it happened to be a woman who had attended the college sometime back in the 70s. So Susan introduced me, and she said, "Oh, I know who you are." She said, "Back when I was here, all the girls wanted to get into your biology class because you were so cute." So I floated back up the hill to teach my class. I had a great class that day, really good lecture. And as it was ending, a 20-something young woman stood up in the back of the class and said, "Oh my God, he's so brilliant. I wish he was my grandfather."
Am I the last one standing? Has everybody done theirs? Okay. All right. So we had lunch, some of us, before this panel, and both John and Eduardo are biologists by training, and first a professor, then a president. But I actually am not a professor by training. I went to graduate school to learn about higher education, and I took all those courses, you know, this and this, so economics in higher education, politics in higher education, finance, and the whole 9 yards, all of that. But biological training might have been really helpful to me last summer because we had a summer that I would call the Wild Kingdom in Founders Hall. You know, I wasn't solving financial problems, political problems, economic, but we were trying to deal with, first, a huge invasion of termites, which was really pretty amazing to me because I didn't grow up in a climate where you could have termites. So now I know that they have wings. Corey said, if they have wings, they're termites. And then we had mice, but there were some mice that were like a lot bigger than regular mice, and they were able to climb the walls in Founders. You know, it's a concrete block, but it's got lots of nice little places for their little tiny paws to catch on it, do a little like spelunking or whatever, climbing the caves. But really the coup de grace was finding several snakes, one of which was in our office, and we were in the president's office. I don't know, you know, and we're trying to, like, how did that snake get there? You know, like through the front door and then down the hall and then in one, and when it's in the little room with the, you know, it's like, yeah, see, it's like, it was unbelievable. So it was, this is something that my graduate training did not train me for, but I'm thinking that yours might have. Yeah, there you go.
I always wondered where that snake went.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions, comments. Yeah, would you go to use the mic?
So my comment is thank you. And I've had the pleasure of knowing all of you, and that's great, honor of mine. But my comments are for the people behind me, as I hope Jonathan won't mind. We're all here because we love the college, or the people, we have a relationship. And if we're going to do something for this college, our opportunity is right now. Jonathan wrote his white paper. We've heard some suggestions. Oh, Jake, the chancellor, is going to be here May 8th. We have to show up, we have to speak up, and we have to give. Many of you have given to the foundation. You've given your lives to this place, but it's time for us to give our time and our treasure to make sure this place does have a wonderful 50th anniversary. And we've got to do it together. And everything that was said here is so true about our community. If one thing, I'm celebrating my 50th year in this community this year. And we do work better together than any place I've lived, and I've lived a lot of places. But we've got to do this together. And it's not going to just happen. And it's not just us. It's our friends and the people that didn't show up today. Please do that.
Anyone else want to make a comment or? Okay, let's give the last word to President Wasescha.
Oh. You know, I was so lucky to come here after Jonathan had spent the year as the interim because he gave me a tremendous amount of advice and he encouraged me, and, you know, everybody should have a mentor as wonderful as Jonathan has been. But it is such a drag that he also turns to me and expects me to do things like sum up something I think as profound as listening to all of the presidents here, and I include Jonathan, even though he's not at the table, in any kind of way that can really, you know, do it justice. I can't do it justice. this is a special college. We all know that. We all helped to build this college, and all of you in the audience helped to build it too. And I do think Patty's right, that we got to muster all of our resources to stand up for this college and to keep it going, even if it maybe will be different, as Leila described it. The thing about all of us, and maybe the beauty of going to college is that it teaches you to be optimistic and a problem solver and not to give up. And there's a kind of like you just keep getting up every day and going back into battle because you know what you're doing is right. And it's really important, and it makes you feel like you can go to sleep at night and know that you did the right thing, right? So, it's just, I want to thank Jonathan for being a great mentor, and you know, and probably thank him for giving me the opportunity to sum this up. Although I don't feel that I can really do it because I feel so strongly about it, and it's hard to find the right words. I want to thank every one of my former colleague presidents who are here on the panel, and my current colleague presidents, Wilfredo and Cathryn. And Cathryn is retiring at the end of June from Tunxus, and Wilfredo is still soldiering on at Capital Community College, living here in Middletown, Connecticut, but they've got tremendous challenges ahead of them, as you well know. It's like this is a time where it's going to take more creativity and more concentration to figure out another way to skin this cat than it has in past, I think, episodes of financial challenge in the state. I want to point out, I was told by Corey to remember two things. One is that the alumni, there's alumni information here. The foundation office has got, of course you saw the memorabilia coming down the hallway to this room, but there is some information about activities that they're going to be doing for alumni, and Cheryl Dumont-Smith, do you want to stand up so everybody, she's the director of our foundation. And she's coming to the microphone, and then I have one other thing I was supposed to remember, but you
Okay, I just want to finish that, Anna, which is that there have been a group of alumni, a number of them who are here today, who have helped me and Carolyn Summer bring the alumni network back into reality. I mean, there's a lot of enthusiasm. We have over 80,000 alumni who went to this college, and I think for the most part, no one's ever called on them before or helped them stay connected. And, you know, we've just started to do that, and we have a great group that's already happening. So there's a table over there. There's some things going on. Just some of them are going to be here. Please go over and say hello. That's all. We're just trying to make it happen, okay? Thank you.
Good, thanks. Is there anything anybody else wants to add? I'm looking side to side. All right, well then I think it's time to eat, drink, and be merry. That's the other thing I wanted to remind you. At the back of the room, Corey has helped with some other folks to lay out some comestibles and beverages, both the kind that Bacchus encouraged us to imbibe, and then I think probably some H2O for the others. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here tonight, and I hope you'll hang around and talk so we can have a good time together. Just
couple of housekeeping things.
Okay.
One is I told people that we'd probably be done by about 6, so some magical food may not be here till 6 o'clock, which means you've got to talk to each other till 6. And the other is we've been asked, the panel, please stay here for a picture that somebody wants to take. So thank you. Dianne wants to have the last word. Give her the last word.
For those presidents who are here, and a few who couldn't make it, if there's one thing we did well, one of us or the few absentees hired every one of the staff here, so we did something right.